Welcome back to the IX event. Once again, here's Mehul Shah.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone had a productive day. You're able to challenge your speakers, LNS Research analysts, with some difficult questions. And we really hope that we continue this in the final session of today, which is going to be the keynote panel. So I've done this for now a few years, and this is supposed to be one of the most interesting and engaging sessions. And it's all because of the audience here. I hope you can continue to ask questions, challenge, and engage in this executive panel. So the topic of today's executive panel is a topic that's at top of the mind for a lot of executives, whether you're a CEO, a plant manager, or frontline workforce. Industrial AI is a topic that has an opportunity to have a real impact on several of our goals, whether it's quality, whether it's reliability, whether it's safety. But the most impact it's probably going to have is on the decision-making at different levels within the organization. But to get the most value from industrial AI, it's also important to understand what are the potential pitfalls, what are the failures, how do we avoid them so that we can get the most value from industrial AI. And when I think about the challenges, I think about a few of them. One, data availability. Do we have the data available and accessible to effectively leverage AI? Two, the skills. Do we have the skills in the organization? Does our people believe in the whole idea of industrial AI? Three, the integration of data. A lot of our data is still in Microsoft Excel sheets. Do we have the data, and is it integrated enough to get value from industrial AI? The fourth part is scalability and sustainability. It's easy to get industrial AI use case within a problem, within a plant, or within an assembly line, but can you build a system so that 2 + 2 is equal to 5, so you can actually get step change improvement with industrial AI? And the final and the most important aspect is trust. Does our employees trust on the insights that are driven by industrial AI? So today, we have an amazing panel, some amazing speakers that will challenge the way you think about industrial AI and how you can create a closed-loop learning system from industrial AI. So please join me in welcoming the moderator for today's panel, Bob Francis.
All right, thank you, Mehul, and welcome everybody back to the general session and those that are joining on the live stream. What we want to do is sort of set the stage for the panel now. As Mehul said, we've got some great experts that'll be joining me up here on stage in just a few minutes, but I wanted to just talk about this idea of step change, the multiplier effect we're looking for that is possible when we deploy all this new AI technology. And you know, it was not even 1 year ago. It was November 30th, I believe, 2022, when ChatGPT was released. And within a month, they had over 1 million users that had signed up and registered for accounts. And the last data I saw was 1.6 billion individual hits on ChatGPT in the month of August. So there is an exponential growth capability, and that's sort of what I wanted to do as part of our setup this morning or this afternoon was talk about this accelerated change, the possibility of radically transforming organizations as we deploy this technology. And it reminded me of a story I heard years ago and was just refreshed in my memory. My dad, this is a personal story, but it's relevant to our conversation today about the potential of radically changing how an organization works when we deploy new technology. My dad was in the military, second lieutenant, stationed at Fort Bliss, El Paso, and as he moved from active duty into the reserves, like most reservists at that time, you try to find a job, you still have to be close to the base to go serve your reserve duty, and my dad was based at Fort Bliss, El Paso, and he got a job with El Paso Natural Gas. This is in the early 60s, and they had just purchased, El Paso Natural Gas had just purchased this brand new IBM 1401. And my dad, being an innovator and someone with that military culture that doesn't like to see things just sit in status quo, is not how my dad operated. He was always trying to push the envelope. So he taught himself IBM Basic, wrote some programs on those punch cards that were fed into the 1401, and his degree from Texas A&M was accounting and finance. And so his job at El Paso Natural Gas was in the accounting and finance group, specifically internal audits. And he saw a problem, he saw mass inefficiency, and he saw there was technology that could greatly alter the way that that business process worked. With 10,000 employees at El Paso Natural Gas at that time, 64-ish, 65, they did an annual audit of the payroll. That took 5 people, roughly 15 weeks to do. And very labor-intensive process at that time. My dad figures out how to write this program and teaches the 1401 to take that 5-person, 15-week process to audit the entire payroll, and it does it in 15 minutes. Talk about a step change. This was a radical change in freeing up resources, precious resources in that department to go work on other important items. It's many of the same step change opportunities that we see with autonomous and other forms of AI being deployed in our plants. And IBM, they've gone through multiple versions of Watson, Watson curing cancer, Watson playing Jeopardy, all these other versions of Watson. Then their latest iteration, Watson X, they actually have a very elegant, sophisticated deployment of a closed-loop learning system using everything that they've learned with Watson AI over the years. So you go in that 60 years of punch cards and the 1401 to the latest tech that they're rolling out. They're still trying to solve business problems and improve operations. And as Mehul said, we all know many use cases that can be deployed as this technology matures. Gen AI, co-pilot, digital assistant, and in my coverage area of asset performance management, we're seeing the deployment of causal AI, really moving the ball past just knowledge and getting to this idea of not just a remedy, a recommendation being brought forward to resolve the issue that's identified, but then the closed loop process to learn that system and have it continue learning. Matt showed us this slide last year, our analytics framework that discusses this closed loop process as we move from predictive to prescriptive to prognostic, and close that system so we have a continuous learning loop and are continuing to make improvements. And in our research, 2023 State of IX Tech, 321 of our respondents told us, hey, we are going down this road thinking about the future, factory of the future, and how we move to an autonomous deployment that improves our activity, leaders versus followers. You all know our methodology there, but seeing leaders really make a step change forward in deploying this technology. And something that we want to discuss a little bit further with the panel is an architectural framework that makes this possible. Some things have changed, but some things are the same. There's really these 3 buckets of you have data science resources and you're going to go the custom approach. Maybe you have a best of breed approach where you want to leverage some off the shelf and some use of different analytics packages. And then there is the platform approach, that what we call the vendor ecosystem. We'll talk more about this with the panel today. There's not a one-size-fits-all, but there's an architecture that enables this step change process of deploying this. So change is happening. There's a lot of marketing and buzz around generative AI. We want to sort of demystify that today and make sure that we're on course and deploying something that is going to be beneficial to the organization, has the trust of the organization, as Mehul mentioned, and really moves us forward in terms of leveraging knowledge within our organization and is safe. So from the 1401 that my dad worked on 60 years ago to the co-pilot, the digital assistant that will be riding alongside our frontline workers and our staff to make them more effective and more efficient as we move into the future. That's what's possible. significant step change benefits driven into the organization. So at this time, I'd like to have our panel join us up here on stage. Come on up, team. Doesn't matter. Pick a chair, have a seat, grab a mic. We're going to keep it casual here. Mike, grab a mic. Very good. Excellent. Well, we want to make sure that some of our folks here in the room have already met you guys, but we have a group joining on the live stream. So why don't we, each of you has given us a little bit of bio information. So Sarah, I'll start with you. I think there's some material prepared. And introduce yourself to the audience here and to those watching on the live stream, and let's learn about your role at Augury.
Perfect. So thanks for having me, first of all. My name is Sar. I'm co-founder and CEO of Augury. Started the company with my co-founder 12 years ago, just before AI became cool. And it was machine learning back in the days. And what we do is we work with the largest manufacturing companies to make their production facilities more reliable, more productive, and more sustainable. If you can click on the clicker. Oh, here it is. OK. And we focus on two main themes, right? If you look at where the industry today is investing, companies like you are investing your dollars in digital manufacturing, there are two main areas. The first is machine health, right? Predictive maintenance, asset performance management, reliability. This is where we started. Today, we're deployed in over 700 factories in 35 countries around the world, working with the largest manufacturing companies in the process industry, not discrete yet. And at the very basic level, we put these sensors on the machines. We measure vibration, temperature, magnetic emissions from the motor. We connect it to the cloud, where we run our own sophisticated AI diagnostics. And very importantly, we provide the professional services around change management and reliability. Last year, as an example, working with one of the largest food companies, we helped them avoid 4,000 hours of downtime, which equal 10 million pounds of product that they were able to manufacture. At the same time, we also helped them reduce their waste by 45%, improve energy efficiency by 6%. And this is through process health, right? Not only what is the mechanical health of the machine, but also what is the machine doing? Is it manufacturing quality product? Is it consuming the raw materials in the best way? And underneath all of this, fundamental to everything we do is AI, or sophisticated analytics. And what we found is that the most important thing, and I believe it was just mentioned earlier, is trust. Right? When you look at deploying new technologies, it's not about the technology, it's about cultural change that you need to manage. And the moment that the solution either gives too many false alarms or misses malfunctions in our case, you lose trust. And I wanted to share a video here because it's very relevant for this session that kind of shows that.
Any AI-based analytics programs with these condition monitoring programs that you were looking into? Anything revolving around AI?
I did. As far as my experience with them, not very good. I'm not going to say AI in general is crap, because honestly, that was my only experience, but they were a fairly new startup company, and they just did not impress me. That AI threw a lot of red flags out there on equipment that did not have any issues at all. So a lot of the boy who cried wolf type situations where he was saying, hey, you got a piece of equipment that's going to fail in 2 days. You go out and check it. It looks healthy and fine. 2 days passed, it's still healthy and fine. Okay, and then you have another piece of equipment that fails abruptly, and there was no indication at all. So I had very little trust in it in my experience with it.
So if you're now going into this person's facility, and now you try to convince them to try another solution, you're starting way, way back. So what we found, and we'll talk a lot, I'm sure, about it, is kind of the accuracy of AI. And when you talk about generative AI, it's even more so.
Thank you, Sar. Mike.
All right. Hey, Mike Tomasco from Pfizer. I lead a group called Digital Manufacturing, so we take care of all the solutions, people, and processes in our manufacturing plants, our production system that also goes across the entire supply chain and management system of Pfizer Global Supply. And we're supposed to talk a little bit about our AI journey. So just this week, we had a global town hall with the state of our company and where we're at. You can read about it in the news. And number 4 on the list of the CEO's priorities was AI, and AI to bring us more productivity to the organization, whether that's in R&D, in our case, manufacturing, the commercial organization, so on and so forth. So we've been on the AI journey for quite some time, machine learning and all. And we have quite a few products that we work with. We build a lot of this ourselves. We're on that part of the spectrum, leveraging platforms to build things. And I look forward to sharing a little bit more about that as we go. And I tried ChatGPT to make me a slide. It didn't work very well, so this is it. That's all you got.
Perfect. Great. Terry.
Thanks for having me. As it reads, I'm the former VP of Digital Manufacturing for Nestle Purina Zone AMS. You know, I had the opportunity to not just be part of Industry 3.0, but really take off on Industry 4.0 as an early adopter. And our focus has always been about enhancing human performance, right? Getting the right building blocks in, and how do we drive emotional participation to build what SAR talked about was that trust. You've got to trust the digital tools on the factory floor to succeed, and lining those digital building blocks up to get us to generative AI.
John.
Thanks for having me here. It's an honor to be here, and it's certainly an honor to be on this panel today. I lead an organization called the Smart Manufacturing Institute. It's actually SESME, but we refer to ourselves as the Smart Manufacturing Institute. It's a unique kind of organization. We're funded by the federal government to help U.S. manufacturing become more competitive and to accelerate the adoption of smart manufacturing. And so we have been given roughly $200 million to accomplish our mission, and we have the opportunity to, as a consortia, to bring this ecosystem together, along with great organizations like a lot of the folks you see here. I certainly appreciate deeply working with Matt and the team here at LNS to bring the brightest minds together to figure out how we can solve some really, really complicated problems. This one slide perspective here talks a little bit, or summarizes a little bit about our worldview at SESME. We've created significant technical debt here in this country and around the world around the third industrial revolution. I love what Matt said this morning. I have exactly the same chart that I update quarterly on manufacturing productivity here in the US. That ought to be a huge flag for any manufacturing organization that's trying to reshore or friendshore or regionalize their supply chains. We need more productive manufacturing operations, not plateauing or declining operations, right? So thinking about that deeply, bringing this, the sort of leadership in this space together, the vendors, the consultants, the systems integrators, the machine builders, and of course, most important, the manufacturers themselves, to understand the technical debt that we've created and figure out how to move forward. The word interoperability, I think, is becoming more common. I think it's a little overused, but I think it's also the single most important idea behind how we can level that or bring that productivity curve back where it needs to be. It's about culture, it's about people, it's about ideas, convening, collaboration, technology. This is kind of my last comment, this OT-IT convergence thing we've been talking about for 20 years, we're not there yet. In many ways, we're as far apart as we've ever been. And tying this finally back to AI today, we need much more sophisticated practices and understanding of manufacturing data than we have today. If we're going to see AI and machine learning scale in manufacturing operations, it's going to be because we have a much more rigorous, sophisticated, informed, collaborative view of how data can be used to transform an operation.
Thank you. So, my name is Niels Andersen. I'm a research analyst here at LNS Research, and Bob came to me and said, why don't you create a timeline for my journey in AI? So you can get up the next slide. And as an engineer, I created a timeline. So, my timeline goes quite far back. Back in 1990, started doing projects around what we called fuzzy logic, which was really some of the early projects around neural networks. And I must admit that, I had that experience. I think Sarah explained it was not very impressive. It was kind of dull and it didn't do much. Then I had the pleasure of serving as a research scientist in a military research institute doing missile navigation systems where we combined GPS signals and inertia-based navigation, and started using another type of AI, something we call Kalman filters, which was a model-based AI that allowed us to filter out and generate data that wasn't otherwise there, and it gave me a lot more hope in what was possible within those systems. Then I had a fairly long part of my career where I think it was more just traditional analytics, a lot of contextualization around what we call the Purdue model or the ISA 95 model. And then around 2015, I joined a company that John has worked with quite a lot called ThinkIQ, where we actually started doing contextualization around material flow. And it was quite an interesting concept that allowed us to do analytics based on incoming raw material, their quality attributes, the processing conditions, the equipment that went through quite long processes, sometimes taking a year to go through, and then be able to correlate that data and see how it impacted yield and throughput. As part of that, we started also doing things that were quite interesting. A lot of the AI systems up until then had been what I would describe as black box. And I'm a person that want to trust. I want to see it to trust it and to believe it. And at that point, there was the start of what was called like gray box AI using Shapley models, where we could actually explain the correlation between the inputs and outputs and how they fit together, which was quite a good step forward. And then lately, ChatGPT has been around, I think, since 2017, but the launch now in November last year of ChatGPT 3.5 really has accelerated my use and my journey around AI. And one of the things that's very interesting about it is that if you use it, for instance, to generate code, you can actually see the result it's creating and validate that and see what's going forward. Lately, here at LNS Research, we've been working on industrial transformation, of course, but we also created a reference architecture. Just bring up the next slide there. I just want to mention this very briefly. You can dive into it. And we had that for years, the reference architecture. We've been expanding on that and really take a deep look into the personas who's going to use all this information, use all this intelligence, and how we would put together such an architecture. And what we've done now is we designed it in such a way that we believe that it is more about categories of software that can actually be bought or assembled or reused from what you have within your application. Big focus on applications, how you manage the applications, how you treat the data, process the data through data ops, how you tie this into cloud infrastructure, and then how you build the plant network and secure the network. So thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you, Niels. Well, we've prepared some questions to try to get the conversation going, but we'll do a Q&A with you in the audience here in a few minutes. But sorry, there's a question Niels and I get all the time as we're interacting with organizations out there, large and small. And usually the question goes something along the lines of, I'm not Shell, I'm not Pfizer, I don't have a huge team. So let's open up the questions and discussion here a bit around, do you have to have a big team of data scientists to even go down this road and be successful?
Well, the answer is no, in my opinion, but a bit more kind of context. So first we need to ask, what is AI, right? And there's differences between the generative AI, which is a fairly new concept, and the more of predictive analytics and statistical classifiers and whatnot, which is not new. It's been around for a decade or so. And when you ask Gartner or McKinsey, and I'm sure that you have the same statistics, they would argue that 60 to 70% of digital initiatives fail today. Mm-hmm. And the reason is that people come in and say, okay, I want to do AI, right? What does it take to do AI? But it's the wrong question. The question is, what is the outcome you want to achieve? AI is the tool, it's not the outcome. So first, let's identify, do you want to increase uptime and capacity? Do you want to reduce waste and meet sustainability targets? And then let's select the right tool for the job. And I think these days we see AI become not just a tool, but another layer in the stack. Mm-hmm. Like it used to be databases, right? Now everyone uses a NoSQL database. Everyone will use AI, and we're already starting to see AI being integrated in every solution, from email and Microsoft Office to ERPs and machine health solutions, every single system will have AI capabilities. And I personally believe that in order to solve a specific use case, you need a vertically focused company that knows the in and outs of this specific user persona, their daily flows, how the adoption and engagement works. And therefore, the AI becomes a part of the solution. But if you want to build it your own, right, it's a very, very tall task to expect your internal team to not just develop the algorithm models, but also do the customer success and create the flows and the user interface to really be successful.
Excellent. Mike, did you want to jump onto that question there and just talk about your organization and how you approach?
Sure, yeah, thanks. Because I think that we have a slightly different perspective on that. I would build upon it and say that it is possible to build some of your own stuff if you have that right team. And we're all different sized organizations and have different skill sets. And we like to leverage best of breed type solutions and augment that with our own ability to build applications. So we've been building a team for the last several years that is focused on building analytical web-based apps. But that's not where we started. We started with the foundational work. Right? Without the foundational work of making sure you have your processes in a good state, those processes are going through a similar set of core systems to generate the data and hopefully manage that data in a good way. Don't do what we did originally with our cloud data work, where we tried to put all the data in the cloud. And the nightly refresh was 48 hours the first time we tried that. That's not a good idea. Start with use cases, to your point. What problems are you trying to solve? And then we use the user-centric design approach to work through what we're trying to solve and design experiences that we want people to have with this information and drive their decision making. So it's possible, but you're right, you have to have the right partners, you have to have the right mindset, and you have to be willing to go try. It's not gonna always work, and that's okay, as long as you fail fast and don't fail often, just fail fast and learn from it.
Mike, are we early in the adoption phase here? What is your guidance to your team as you guys are thinking about not this year, but what's coming in year 2, year 3, especially given what Matt mentioned this morning, that in your industry sector, things are changing and changing fast?
It's really interesting because you always hear life sciences is slow to adopt technology, and really from the top of the house on down, like I mentioned in the intro, we're being asked to drive forward quickly. So luckily we have this 7 years of digital transformation behind us. We have good systems in place. We have our infrastructure in place where we're streaming data from equipment in real time, near real time to the cloud, and then back down to the edge if we want to run models on the edge. We're just getting to the point where that is getting industrialized and scalable. So for the next couple of years, we'll continue to see that scale up, and the adoption of these technologies will really take off. We're in a good spot.
Yeah, great. Terry, you were in my last session and you gave a great overview of deployment of a lot of different types of technology, including industrial AI. Where do you see the next big gains coming from?
You know, as ChatGPT comes out, and I hate to say this and show my age, but you know, I start to think about Space Odyssey 2001 and HAL, right? If you really think about where some of these language models can go for the manufacturing operator on the floor, it becomes that co-pilot, that personal digital assistant, learning to bring information to me when I need it in a way that I work best, right? So this becomes a new horizon, but that's not tomorrow, right? You've gotta, like Mike has said, there are some basic building blocks that you really need to get in place before you try to move into these tools. And you're always going to have human eyes in this space, right? And that's why I say co-pilot, you know, because it's only going to learn by what the input you give it from that standpoint. So, but I think it's the next huge productivity horizon for enhancing human performance. And we do this to drive better productivity.
And your experience is, for those that in the frontline workers who are not as, they're concerned in some sectors about jobs being taken away and, you know, the robots are going to come in and do everything. That's not what you experienced.
Actually not. You know, in the example, you know, with our implementation augury, right, we had some job changes, right? You know, as we gain that productivity from implementing a predictive solution for machine health, it allowed us to reallocate some very smart resources in some other areas and keep building upon that productivity enhancement. So no matter how you approach it, you know, I would never say that we went out on the factory floor and said the word AI, right? The media has kind of grabbed a hold of this, and there's a lot of fear around it, right? You know, but we would go out to the floor and talk about, we've got a new tool, here's what it does. You know, you want to participate in trying to figure out how to make this solve this problem. That enhanced the adoption, and I wouldn't say anybody was unhappy about, you know what, I get to go try something new.
Right. So John, your organization, your sort of mission is to help manufacturers drive into this future state to start applying and leveraging and moving down that digital highway to improve manufacturing. What sort of changes are you seeing as you're working with those that are adopting the Sesame model and the technology that you're trying to deliver out there to drive that change?
Yeah, I would say, and I hope this doesn't come across as being critical, but I think collectively the entire ecosystem, as I mentioned before, grew up in an era of PLCs and then we put proprietary networks on those PLCs, and then we kind of connected those PLCs. We connected some of them to via proprietary networks to proprietary software systems, and the entire sort of outcome of that way of doing things, and I think, again, Matt said this morning, 10, 12 years after the introduction of Industry 4.0, we're still kind of propagating that same complexity. If we look at the sort of acid test from my perspective, for a modern, interoperable system going forward is, how different does it look from what it looked like 10 years ago? Are we still propagating stovepipe architectures and data silos, or are we putting lipstick on the pig and calling it Industry 4.0, or are we absolutely trying to think about new ways to reduce costs and complexity? And it's not just kind of sticking it in the cloud and assuming it's going to reduce my costs somewhere, right? So all of that to say that interoperability, standards-based approach to setting up your data platforms, open interfaces, the value of a graph-based approach to structuring your information system, your architecture, so that you can combine material and equipment and users and infrastructure into the same set of analytics. The notion that we're going to scale AI on the shop floor, in the enterprise and in the supply chain is going to take significant collaboration between every stakeholder in this ecosystem. And that's part of our mandate, to kind of raise the tide so that all the boats float higher. And this is also going to drive OT-IT convergence in ways that very few other things have. We have to sort of compress that legacy ISA model, that Purdue model. We no longer have time for that sensor information that's checking the vibration or the temperature, or whatever that sensor is doing to make its way through the HMI SCADA layer, through the historian, through the MES, into your ERP system, and then maybe to a supply chain supplier somewhere.
We got to go outside the plant.
Absolutely.
And connect.
Yep. The next frontier is supply chain data interchange, and to do that, we need to get our foundations right in the plants, in the enterprise, and kind of be thinking about that outcome as we're working on data ops and data foundations today.
Right. Yeah, right on.
Just clapping in the audience.
Niels, so we've been in many sessions and talked to all these end users and to some of the solution providers, but a consistent theme in this topic area that comes up is security. Can we trust it? How much is there any such thing as too much autonomy? So for those that might be wanting to take advantage of industrial AI and generative AI and a chatbot and build that, let's talk a bit about the security concerns, or is that a concern?
Yes, I mean, what possibly could go wrong? You know, but I second what John's saying here. You know, we need to get the basics right, and we need to make sure we do it right. And you know, I hear all these doomsday stories about like it's going to take over the world. I don't believe in that, but I believe that there's a number of things that can go wrong. And I think some of the most basic ones is that we forget that garbage in is equal to garbage out. And we basically don't feed the systems the right information, or we feed it the wrong information or incorrect information, conflicting information. And we forget that these systems, you know, we say that they're hallucinating once in a while, but generative AI is generally hallucinating all the time. It just hallucinates a little bit better when you give an answer you actually like. But there is a lot of good content in there, and we just need to be very confident about how we use this information and what we do with it. And we have to do the basics right. If we don't do the basics right, all this intelligence is going to fail. Personally, when I look at AI, I wish that we called it like an illusion of intelligence, because that's more of what it is sometimes, so we don't overestimate it. And I think it's just critical that we don't try to put something into this new technology that it's not, and overestimate what it's doing. So a lot of things can go wrong. With security, you know, you can feed your data into a public database and get it misused. You can go in and use a model that was trained on data that it didn't have copyright on. There are so many issues you need to be aware of. And I think the beauty and some of the problems with the generative AI in general is that it's so accessible. I've never seen a technology that is so advanced that anyone who knows how to use a keyboard and a screen can use. But it's also so easy to misuse if you're not critical about the information you give back to you.
Mike, we've heard from a few folks attending this week that, you know, the lawyers tend to want to weigh in. So I'm imagining you may have had a few of those conversations as it relates to AI.
Man, you're putting me on the spot on that one.
That's why I'm here.
Yes. So we have a generative AI program driven by the top down. So we actually have a directive at the top for every ELT member in the company to have at least 2 generative AI programs, proof of concepts, up and live by the end of this year. We were given about 3 months to figure that out. Some of those will work, some of them might not work. There's some pretty interesting ideas there, but embedded on each team is a lawyer to understand the implication of, are we doing something internal, external, what type of data is it, what kind of decision are we trying to drive. In the manufacturing side, we're okay with the lawyers because it's all internal information. We're looking at layering Gen AI in as a tool, right? So it's not the solution itself. We already have some AI-based applications that are doing some interesting things with analytics to alert process engineers or operators to anomalies in the process that's running. We can add in there a co-pilot, so to speak, for next best action based upon past history to help lead them down a decision path. Like, that's what we're going to try to prove out and then build on from there. We have hundreds of ideas of how we could apply that tool, but personally, in our group, we are looking at it as an extra tool in the toolbox. It is not the answer for everything, and I think that's one takeaway everyone should have. If you have an executive who's going around saying this is going to solve all of the company's problems, that's not really the point of it. The point of it is one more tool. It's a great, powerful tool, but you have to apply it appropriately.
Right. Terry, in an earlier session, we were talking about, on that point, about user adoption and techniques and methodologies that you deployed that built that trust with the organization, whether it was AI or whether it was the CFW solutions being rolled out. Talk to us a bit about this idea of applying industrial AI, but not losing the trust of the frontline workforce, and then that scales, unfortunately, that stream rolls up to leadership if it's not handled correctly.
Yeah, so in this AI space, you know, I don't think it's much different than anything we've done in Connected Worker, right? You're going to have to focus on the UX, right? And there's some behavioral science behind this, and then developing the trust, right? So how you present this to an operator, if you go out and say, hey, this is going to be right 100% of the time, so just listen to it and do what it says, you're probably going to fail. You're not engaging the operator to participate in what you want this tool to become, you know, as a co-pilot or a help or an enhancement to how that person works. So I think you have to be careful. I think the younger generation, our future workforce is, you know, they use Siri like it's nothing. But my mom sure doesn't, right? So you've got to come up with a way to make this work for these generational differences that we have, and how you present that is going to be key.
Right. Sorry, you've worked across many different industry segments. Our data would show that there's different levels of adoption of industrial AI in different industries. What are you seeing out there in the space in terms of industries that might be on the forefront and those that might be lagging a bit?
So coming from the reliability angle, right, that's where we started to initially apply AI then. It's interesting that the industries that were the most forward-thinking in reliability, oil and gas, chemicals maybe, were actually the laggards in applying new technologies. And the industries like food and beverage, which were really kind of very late to the wagon, they got an opportunity to kind of leapfrog the rest, right? And if you need to start from scratch, you can just kind of go directly to the end state. And I'm assuming that with these new generations of AI, we'll see more of that, right? So companies that are at a lower maturity level now have an opportunity to move much faster, and companies that already have a team of data scientists maybe or whatnot may adopt slower because they already have a good solution that works. They have people in different roles and responsibilities, and now you start competing with them and in kind of an internal homegrown solution. So interestingly, we're seeing more inbounds come in, more interest come in from mid-market companies today, regardless of the segment. But mid-market companies that don't have the whole corporate support system.
John, I think that aligns with your mission and what you're seeing in the marketplace. An opportunity for that small to medium-sized business, now that they have some guidance and a framework to work in, they see a path.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's vital for us to be thinking about that. And as I look at your supply chain at Pfizer or P&G's or ExxonMobil's or anyone's, they're made up of small, medium manufacturers, right? And that's, if you look at the Fortune 1000, not sure if you do the math or not, Fortune 1000 makes up about 0.8% of the manufacturing companies in this country. The rest are small, medium manufacturers, right? So we have to help them across the digital divide. I think the fact that this entire ecosystem, the big sort of technology providers in this space, the consultants, the integrators have been focused on the Fortune 1000. That's left a huge, call it greenfield opportunity for small, medium manufacturers to really, in many cases, leapfrog what I think, Terry, you called before, referred to it before as Industry 3.0. We in the US have invested a tremendous amount in Industry 3.0. Our technical debt that has come out of that is significant. The small, medium manufacturers don't have that. So I think the small, medium manufacturers represent a huge opportunity for new business models, new ways of collaborating. They don't have a lot of the heavy processes and the sort of constraints that a lot of our big manufacturers are constrained by. So I think we're being very intentional to work with a lot of the large manufacturers in this country, the sort of more mature, more sophisticated manufacturers, but to develop the strategy that helps drive the ecosystem forward in ways that that will drive democratization of smart manufacturing, reducing cost and complexity so that the small, medium guys can see accessibility for that as well. Excellent.
I'm going to ask our team to come out with the microphones because we do want to get you involved in the conversation now. Team, if you could raise your hand if you have a question for our expert panel here, and we'll rush a microphone to you and keep the conversation going. Don't be shy now. There's a question. Paul in the back. Thank you, Paul, for being first.
My pleasure. Thanks for the panel. This is a great discussion. So you talked about the small and mids. If I remember the numbers right, it's about 45% of the manufacturing labor force is occupied by small and mid, less than 200-person companies. What would each of you do? Because my time at GE, GE was mega huge manufacturing, but it really wasn't. It was 450 small and mid manufacturers rolled up under a P&L, and everybody had the benefit of that large organization that kind of was the capstone to that. Doesn't exist. how does that change? What do they do? How can they start to move things forward quickly to take advantage of what's going on right now in the whole manufacturing market space? Thanks.
Well, one thing we've seen for a certain type of companies, the private equity backed ones, we've seen the private equity companies, firms become more active in the same way that Nestle corporate would work on the digital strategy for Purina or support that. We're seeing the private equity firms create that strategy and try to enforce it on the companies themselves. For the family-owned businesses, it's much easier. We have a food canning manufacturer where the CEO is the grandson of the founder, and he said, I want to do this, and now we're across all their machines. Because his legacy, his personal legacy, he wants to be the person that brought digital, right? So it depends on the structure, the corporate structure, but I think the new breed of technologies and solutions and vendors should enable much quicker adoption and scale.
Yeah, for a company like ours, you want to be a good partner, and you want to be a partner that people want to work with, and you have to have an incentive system to ask your partners to work with you in that way. Oftentimes in our world, we want access to our suppliers' data that then drives some of our processes, but they need an incentive to be able to provide that. So that's something you have to work through on an individual supplier by supplier basis as best you can.
I'd love to build on that, because I think that's spot on. The sort of push from you, or sorry, the pull from you and the push from these small, medium manufacturers. The bottom line is, this is where, kind of akin back to, I think it's Eisenhower and the 1956 Highways Interchange Act in 1956 that caused the U.S. interstate system to be built across this country. That was something that no individual town, village, city, state could do, and that's the role that we're excited to play right now in this space around suppliers interchanging data with their manufacturers. For you to do that for manufacturer X, who also serves Johnson & Johnson, who also serves Procter & Gamble, you need a standard. You need a set of trust frameworks and regulatory frameworks, and you need standards for that to happen. So you're not asking them to do something that's totally unique from what J&J is asking them for,
yeah,
right?
It's really interesting. We're usually asking them similar things as J&J, let's say. They're on the receiving side of differences. So yeah, that standard would really drive a huge difference for the supplier, for sure.
And I love what you started with, saying this has to be kind of a trust-based, incentive-based relationship. I think prior to COVID, there was more of a likelihood to not recognize the value of that kind of data interchange. And so, not that it was confrontational, but it came at a cost. I think since COVID, I've heard a lot of great companies like Mike's, like Pfizer, talking about wanting to engage in a much, much more collaborative way with their suppliers, and that, I think, is absolutely essential to build trust.
Great.
Yeah, just to build, I fully agree with that, and I think we've seen a lot of examples where a collaborating supply chain will beat a supply chain that competes every day. But there's one thing I want to bring up as well. We can all get very excited with this new generative AI and new AI, and I may sound like a broken record for the people who listened to me before, but before you do anything, make sure you understand what the problem is you're trying to solve.
Right.
Yeah, and because it's so critical to go in, because it's the only way that you can focus your resources on something that actually has value for you, for your customers, for your employees, for the whole ecosystem you have. And it's also the only way that you can go in and actually measure if you've achieved anything that has some value. So keep that in mind.
Go ahead, Terry.
So, I mean, we went through this, right? And sometimes the incentive, you want this from your vertical supplier. Sometimes the incentive for them is that they gain business with others, but your only cost sometimes is really providing the knowledge and the expertise to help them stand that up. And you've done it 100 times already, especially with our packaging suppliers. As we went to some of these data interchanges, we figured out that we need a few people that this is all they do. We bring on a new supplier, hey, this is what we need. Well, they don't have those resources. Well, great, we got some people that help you stand this up really quick. And you would be amazed at the relationship benefits you get in that space. You're helping that vertical supplier grow, and you still get the benefit of that effort.
All right, we got a few minutes left here. Who has another question for our expert panel? Right here in the front row. Ryan is sprinting to you with a microphone. Thank you.
I guess starting with you, Mike, I had the pleasure of participating in the panel with one of the members of your team, Rowan Kelly, and he described some of the things that Pfizer is doing internally in the technology space, digitization. And my question then is, why did Pfizer decide to go that route instead of focusing on commercially available providers? And number two, how did you sell it to your leadership to invest significant resources?
Those are great questions. Thank you, Ronan, for sharing that with the group. And it's really a great question. So why do we, it's the whole old build versus buy scenario. And when digital transformation started itself up in 15, 16, 17, a lot of solutions didn't exist. There were a lot of point solutions, different pieces you could buy. Right. And what we realized, especially with a production system, you couldn't buy a production system. So we created one, right? We had an operational excellence team that was driving in a production system. They were putting paper on the walls, doing all that kind of stuff, and we studied how they were working. We said, oh, wow, we should build that. We did. Patent pending, by the way. So that creates a competitive advantage, right? So it was several executives like Satya from Microsoft. Every company's a software company. That's just a belief that we have on our team, and we have the resources available to us because we've been creating value. How did we sell it? The first year was a bit of a tap dance. They gave us enough money to experiment with. I do remember going to the leadership team 4 times with the same PowerPoint and telling stories. And the storytelling was about the journey. We had nothing really to show for it in that first year, except for a lot of experiments. Some failed, some worked. And then the following year, we consolidated the ones that worked into actual products. And we started this product evolution and journey. So at this point, we have 120 safe, agile teams supporting 100 products, some of which Ronan owns. And he's got some really cool stuff in Smart Factory with virtual reality, augmented reality that we layer onto the shop floor to really drive that connected worker experience that's bringing all that data and information to the shop floor in context. And then if you layer in the Gen AI stuff with next best actions based upon history, we're really going to explode in productivity, we believe. So we're going to keep on that journey, but at this point, it's now demonstrated value because we've built this closed loop. You put something in, you set a target for an improvement, and you can actually measure it. It's the first time in my 27 years of doing this that was possible for us to do. So.
Wow, that's great. The red light is blinking, Terry. I know you'd love to jump in, but we're going to wrap it up here. How about a hand for our expert panel? Awesome. Guys, you're going to exit the stage there. And I'm going to ask Mehul to come up and close us out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. As we close out the day, few helpful reminders. Again, you'll hear me saying again and again, please make sure you give us your responses on the roundtables, on the panel. We would love to get your feedback, good, bad, ugly, anyone's. We're good so that we can improve. Couple of aspects. We have dinner tonight. Hopefully everybody has gotten your dinner invitations. If you don't know what dinner you are in, we have table outside. Please ask our team, and they'll make sure that you're at the right place. Tomorrow, breakfast starts at 7:30. Keynotes are at 8:30. Hopefully you have a fun, productive, and engaging evening. Thanks, everybody.